This is Jonathan from Spin. We're with Buddy from Senses Fail. And Buddy, sobriety is a major issue for musicians for any number of reasons. And on the one hand, it's an individual challenge. It's something that person kind of needs to go through for themselves. But I'm also wondering if part of that process is aided by dealing with that through making music. And I'm wondering if that has been something that you found, that as you've worked through challenges, you've been able to express what you were feeling in music and maybe come out on the better side for it.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of our records are about navigating substance abuse. There's definitely records that I've written specifically about that, and then some that I've written when I was sober for a very long time. And I didn't do the classic 12 steps or anything like that. I never felt like I was out of control. I just felt like I wasn't happy and I needed to look deeper. So I ended up getting into meditation, and specifically Vipassana meditation. And, any kind of group that leads you to understanding something more about yourself, group, music, art, religion, poetry, it doesn't matter. It is super impactful and important. So that's also what helps me to be creative, is that I kind of have navigated things, and I feel like I don't have all the answers, but I can help make a path look more walkable.
When you were struggling with these things, what was the best thing for you in terms of support from friends and family? What can people in that position do to help people that are directly facing this challenge?
Yeah, I think the number one thing that family and friends and anybody in a support group can do is it's to listen, but then to also keep people accountable, because that's another thing too. Accountability is really what destroys addictive behavior within relationships, because a lot of relationships reinforce addictive behavior because of their lack of boundaries. So I think boundaries, and then listening, and then creating manageable, appropriate boundaries for whatever that is. That's what I found, and being on the other side too, of like, oh, we have somebody in our family who might have a problem, with this or that, and that stems all the way. Addiction isn't just substances. It can be food. It can be anything. Really, we can pretty much get addicted to anything.
So by the same token, sometimes people who want to help might not know exactly how to help. And I'm wondering if ever maybe you had a funny situation, or perhaps it was you helping someone else where the best of intentions were there, but they didn't maybe quite know how to, in that moment, do the right thing.
Yeah, luckily, I've never experienced anybody that made things, culturally, drinking is viewed differently. So when you do travel, I do think that there's an alcoholic in America is not an alcoholic in other countries, and vice versa. So it's even a cultural thing that's completely different. So you can wind up in different places with, like, part of my wife's family they're from South America, and they would always, when I wasn't drinking, they're like, because it's so like disrespectful to say no.
Yeah.
And that is also a cultural thing that, me being a white person, I didn't really feel that, but when I would go visit my wife's family, and I'd feel like, man, like I actually feel really bad, because I know that they have a different cultural understanding of their drinking, and I don't want them to be upset. So those were kind of situations that I would find myself in. But again, like, I had a good support system, so my wife would remind them, be like, oh, he doesn't drink, and they're like, oh, okay, but I always felt self-conscious about having to say no.
Well, speaking of
or
support,
wanting to say no.
Speaking of support systems, events like these music festivals that feature the type of music that you play and your contemporaries play, it must be fun to see people at these events who maybe have gone through a similar path of various challenges.
Yeah.
And maybe you bump into someone backstage and you can acknowledge that, hey, we got through the other side of this.
Yeah, when I was on Warped Tour, I used to run a meditation thing. That was like not AA, but it was like a place for people who wanted to do something other than go out and drink at night, you know. And so I see some of those people. I actually seen some of the people who are on the crew who I was with years ago on Warped Tour. So it does happen pretty often, you know.
It's very cool.
And people have asked me for advice too, you know, like how did you navigate it? So sometimes I'll see people that I had given advice years ago, and that's always good to see people being healthy and happy.
Right on. And I've got to ask, you brought up Emo's Not Dead. Just as an observer, it's such a cool phenomenon that this whole new wave of people
Yeah.
is suddenly back into this music to the point where you
Yeah.
can actually do something like that,
Yeah.
which, I don't know, you guys might have laughed at the idea of that 15 years ago.
Oh yeah.
And now it sounds like the greatest thing ever.
Yeah, I think coming out of the pandemic, I think a lot of people are still like trying to get their bearings about like where we are as a group of millions of people just trying to navigate. And I think music is really helpful in just kind of allowing everybody to just at least come together in a space, regardless of, you know, political beliefs and whatnot. And I think that emo music is good for that, because if at one point it was the pop music of the time, so I feel like it does pull from all corners of America, and I think that that's also a reason why it's specifically not alienating. So I think that that's also why it's kind of having a resurgence, and it's always fun to remember your youth when you're older. So I think that has a lot to do with it.
Right on. Thanks so much for being
Yeah,
here, buddy. We
thank
appreciate
you.
your time.
Appreciate it.